Good morning to India, good afternoon to Singapore, and greetings to the rest of the world joining us today. I'm Chuan Wee Meng, CEO of Singapore International Mediation Center, your host today. Warm welcome to ISMS 2021, the inaugural India-Singapore Mediation Summit, making mediation mainstream, reflections from India and Singapore. We are very encouraged by a registration of almost 3,000 participants. I believe many others will be viewing and sharing this in the days to come. Thank you to each one of you for joining us on a Saturday, and special thanks to all our distinguished speakers and guests for gracing this summit. We are also grateful for the strong support from both the Indian and Singapore Supreme Courts, the Ministries of Law, Niti Aayog, and our event partners, without which this summit would not be possible. Thank you. In today's event, we will see unprecedented participation from the highest level of both countries to discuss an increasingly important mechanism to resolve disputes of our time, mediation. We are confident that today's conversations and strong friendships will lead the path to propel mediation further in the near future for both India and Singapore. We are very honored to have the Chief Justice of India and the Chief Justice of Singapore to grace this occasion as joint guests of honor. This is thought to be the first time that the heads of the judiciary of both countries are joint guests of honor for an event, making this really a milestone occasion. Honorable Mr. Justice Ramana, Chief Justice of India, and the Chief Justice Sundaresh Menon, Chief Justice of Singapore, will be delivering keynote addresses in today's summit. I'd like to first welcome Chief Justice Ramana to deliver his keynote address. Chief Justice Ramana, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fang. The Honorable Chief Justice of Singapore, Mr. Justice Sundaresh Menon, Mr. Edwin Fong, Minister for Culture, Community and Youth, and Second Minister for Law, Singapore, Mr. Justice A.K. Sikri, former Judge, Supreme Court of India, Mr. Amitabh Khan, Chief Executive Officer, Niti Aayog, Mr. George Lim, Chairman of the Singapore International Mediation Center, Honorable Judges sitting and retired from India, Singapore, and other countries, distinguished members of the bar from across the world, media persons, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Namaskar. Let me start by expressing my gratitude to everyone involved in organizing today's event. A seemingly impossible task has been made possible through everyone's hard work and support. To this end, let me appreciate and congratulate everyone at the Singapore International Media Center, CAM, Mediation Mantras, and the officers of the Supreme Court of Singapore and the Supreme Court of India. I am extremely pleased to share this platform with Honorable Justice Sundaresh Menon, the very eminent Chief Justice of Singapore. His kindness and generosity of spirit were apparent during my earlier interaction with him. I would also like to thank my dear brother Justice Sikri, who has been a constant source of support and help throughout his process. His guidance throughout my time in the Supreme Court has been invaluable. I am delighted to be speaking at this event, as over the past 18 months, we have not been able to interact due to the pandemic. Meeting all of you, even online, gives me immense pleasure. Conflicts are unavoidable in any society for a variety of reasons: political, economic, social, culture, and religious. And with conflicts, there is also the need to develop mechanisms for conflict resolution. India and numerous Asian countries have a long and rich tradition of collaborative and amicable settlement disputes. The great Indian epic, the Mahabharata, actually provides an example of any early attempt at mediation as a conflict resolution tool, where Lord Krishna attempted to mediate the dispute between the Pandavas and Kauravas. It may be worthwhile to recall that the failure of mediation led to disastrous consequences. Mediation as a concept is deeply embedded into the Indian ethos. Long before the arrival of the British adversarial system in India, various forms of mediation were being practiced as a method of dispute resolution. Disputes were often resolved by the chieftains or elders of the community. Similarly, disputes relating to business were resolved by merchants, either by direct negotiations or through merchant bodies. However, the establishment of the British court systems in 1775 marked the erosion of community-based indigenous dispute resolution mechanisms in India. The British judicial system has ultimately become the framework with appropriate modifications for the current judicial system in India. A funny anecdote captures the attitude of the judges in this adversarial system. When a judge, sipping his early morning coffee, flipping through the newspapers, his granddaughter approached him and said, "Grandpa, my older sister has taken away my toy." The judge's immediate response is, "Do you have any evidence?" The Indian judicial system is unique not only because of a written constitution, but also because of the immense faith reposed by the people in the system. People are confident that they will get relief and justice from the judiciary. It gives them the strength to pursue the dispute. They know that when things go wrong, the judiciary will stand by them. The Indian Supreme Court is the guardian of the largest democracy. The Constitution gives wide-ranging powers and jurisdiction to do complete justice between the parties to bring to life the motto of the Indian Supreme Court, Yato Dharma Tato Jaya. That is, where there is Dharma, there is victory. Having said that, I think there are a few contributing factors that have revived the alternative dispute resolution mechanisms in India. The first, it relates to judicial delays. The often quoted statistics that in pendency in Indian courts has reached 45 million cases, which is perceived as the inability of the Indian judiciary to cope up with the caseload. This is an overstatement and an uncharitable analysis. The term pendency is used to refer to all cases which have not yet been disposed of, without any reference to how long the case has been spent in the judicial system. This would mean that the case which was filed yesterday gets added to the pendency statistics. This is therefore not a useful indicator of how well or poorly a system is doing. Rather, it is important to reduce arrears and backlogs in the system. Arrears refers to delays that are unwarranted. Every delay is not an arrear. Some cases of delay might be due to valid reasons. On the other hand, backlogs refers to a situation where the number of cases instituted in a period is more than the number of cases disposed of in the same period. There is no doubt that the issues of judicial delays is a complex problem, not just in India. Several factors contribute towards such a situation. One of them is an Indian phenomena called luxurious litigation. It is a specific type of litigation wherein parties with resources attempt to frustrate the judicial process and delays it by filing numerous proceedings across the judicial system. Undeniably, the prevailing pandemic COVID has also contributed to our woes. The sheer number of cases in the Indian judicial system may have to be viewed in the context that India is the largest democratic republic in the world. The people believe in the constitutional project of which the judiciary is an integral part. The judges in India, particularly in the constitutional courts, often burn the midnight oil to meet their judicial and administrative caseload. The second factor which contributed to the growth of ADR relates to the increased access to justice in India. It can safely be stated that the legal aid programs in India is one of the largest and most robust. Under the Legal Service Authorities Act 1987, the judiciary has been given statutory backing and responsibility in ensuring greater access to justice. And I can proudly state that it is one of the greatest success stories of modern India. Nearly 70% of the Indian population, particularly the poor, women, children, minority, senior citizens, and the differently abled, are eligible for benefits under various schemes run by the legal service authorities. As we enter the silver jubilee year of the establishment of the National Legal Service Authority, it is time to rejoice in the remarkable achievements and to further strengthen the legal aid movement in the country. Apart from increasing legal awareness, the National Legal Service Authority encourages the settlement of disputes through ADR. One such mechanism is the Lok Adalat, literally people's court. Lok Adalats are tasked with the responsibility of settling cases which are referred to them from courts or by parties themselves. Prior to initiating litigation, these are referred. To give you some indication of the scope of the activities, over 7.84 million cases were settled by Lok Adalats in 2019 and 2020. Nearly 3.94 million cases were settled at the pre-litigation stage itself. This is despite the pandemic and was possible by building an efficient online dispute resolution system in India. Another important factor that resulted in India shift towards ADR mechanisms relates to the opening of the Indian markets, that is the major economic reforms undertaken in 1995. Laws were required to be modified to keep pace with ever-changing society and its needs. There was a need to increase the confidence of investors and business, both domestic and foreign, and allow them more autonomy and control in resolving the disputes arising out of their investments and business plans. After India opened its economy, the Parliament enacted the Arbitration and Conciliation Act 1996 to bring the Indian arbitration regime in the line with the UNCITRAL model law. This was probably the most important legal reform which has received immense attention by the Indian legal and business community. The law attempts to put a framework in place that allows for maximum party autonomy with the least judicial interference. ADR mechanisms, particularly mediation and conciliation, can reduce pendency, save resources and time, and allow litigants a degree of control over the process and outcome of the dispute resolution process. Designed around a participatory model, mediation and conciliation enable parties to become insiders to a process that traditionally treated them as outsiders. This is the important point. As a result, the focus has shifted to the flexible, non-adjudicatory dispute resolution process of mediation and conciliation. Mediation and conciliations are interchangeable expressions in many jurisdictions. However, in India, the conciliator has wider powers than a mediator. The conciliator can make a proposal for settlement and can formulate the terms of the settlement. The mediator, on the other hand, only acts as a facilitator for the parties to come to a settlement. Unlike conciliation, which is governed by the Arbitration and Conciliation Act of 1996, mediation is not governed by any specific statute in India. The Industrial Dispute Act 1947 and a provision regarding mediation. More recently, the Commercial Courts Act 2015 and the Real Estate Regulation and Development Act 2016 have provisions relating to compulsory pre-litigation mediation. Amendments have also been made to the Companies Act 2013 and the Consumer Protection Act 2019 that allow for mediation. Most importantly, a provision in India's Civil Procedure Code empowering courts to refer parties to mediation was revived by the Parliament in 1999, being Section 89 of the CPC. However, it was left to the Indian Supreme Court to give life to this section of the code. The absence of any guidelines or rules for the operation of mediation was being sorely felt and was one of the reasons that mediation was not taken up. In a constitutional challenge to Section 89 CPC, the Supreme Court of India appointed a committee to draft mediation rules, which were subsequently approved, and all the high courts were directed to frame the rules. This led to the development of court-annexed mediation in India. In the celebrated judgment of Afghans International, the Supreme Court of India clarified certain ambiguities which were inherent in the drafting of Section 89 CPC. The section, as its originally stood, placed the cart before the horse. The Supreme Court held that it is the duty of the court to find out the suitability of the ADR resolutions of a particular dispute and refer the parties to the same. Further, the court facilitated the enforceability of such settlements by requiring them to be made a part of the final decree. Court-annexed mediation, along with the mandate to refer matters to ADR mechanisms under Section 89 CPC, can be considered an Indian adoption of the multi-door courthouse proposed by Harvard professor Frank Sander. The model suggested by Professor Sander include a center that would contain numerous disputes resolution mechanisms under one roof. A screening would take place, and after determination of the nature of the problem, the parties would refer to the appropriate door to resolve their dispute. In the current Indian scenario, the screening provided for under Section 89 CPC takes place within the court. Subsequently, the court may refer the matter to the appropriate ADR mechanisms, including mediation. Such mediation referables often happen in the Supreme Court of India, and I have personally seen disputes that have subsisted for decades get resolved through the process of mediation within a short time. The Afghan International Judgment also highlighted certain types of disputes that it would be profitable for a court to refer to mediation, and certain other categories of cases wherein mediation might not be appropriate. It may merit mention that most cases being referred to the court-annexed mediations related to family or matrimonial disputes. Private mediations which take place at the pre-litigation stage are also becoming more prevalent in the country. Most arbitration clauses in the commercial contracts have a multi-tiered approach, where the first attempt to resolve the disputes between the parties is through mediation or negotiation. At this juncture, it might be worth mentioning that the House of Lords held in 1992 that agreements to have good faith discussion before opting for arbitration or court litigation were not binding. On the other hand, India and Singapore are among the few jurisdictions to have taken a different path and made such agreements enforceable. Apart from enriching and clarifying the law as to mediation, the Supreme Court of India also made an active effort on the administrative side to improve the mediation landscape in India. The Supreme Court Mediation and Conciliation Project Committee was set up in 2005 by the then Chief Justice of India. Some of the committee's most important activities related to the training of mediators, referral judges throughout the country, along with the publication of training manuals. A development in 2019, which bears special mention, relates to the Singapore Convention on Mediation. This is intended to create a framework for cross-border enforcement of international settlement agreements marked a huge step forward. The convention is important for creating trust and faith with respect to international commercial settlement agreements. India was one of the first signatories of the Singapore Convention in 2019. This brings me to the current state of mediation in India. There are nearly 40,000 mediation centers in India. The data suggests that since 2005, nearly 3.22 million cases have been referred and nearly 1 million cases have been settled by mediation up to March 2021. Despite the encouraging figures, certain barriers persist with respect to the adoption of mediation in India. Before ensuring the success of mediation in the country, it is necessary to address issues of legitimacy, credibility, and acceptability of mediation. I would like to leave you with some concluding thoughts regarding modern mediation practices that I believe merit highlighting and deserve discussion. The first relates to the role of a mediator in the dispute resolution process. Traditionally, mediation was thought of as a facilitative process. The mediator played the passive and limited role of improving communication between the parties. He only needed to ensure that parties understood the underlying issues and enabled them to reach a beneficial resolution to their dispute. They therefore acted only as a guide, leading the parties to the best solution. However, with more complex and sophisticated problems now being referred to mediation, particularly in the commercial arena, the role of mediators is changing to include both evaluative and adversary participation. The mediator is now being asked to provide more active assistance to the parties to reach a settlement. He is expected to assess the relative strengths and weaknesses of each party and suggest solutions based on the same. When the role becomes advisory, there is an inherent risk of the mediator losing neutrality, opening up the door for temptations and extraneous consideration. The second issue relates to the extent of neutrality and aloofness of a mediator. A mediator must possess during the process. You can call these problems the mediator's moral dilemma. The theory of mediation contemplates two parties who are equal in bargaining capacity, seeking the assistance of mediator to resolve their disputes. But what happens when one party is better situated economically, socially, and politically than the other? What is the duty of a mediator if the settlement reached is patently unjust to the weaker party? Should the mediator be a silent spectator during such negotiations? Is the mediator merely concerned with enabling the parties to arrive at a settlement and not concerned with the terms of the settlement? These are just some of the questions which one must consider. Particularly in a country like India, our diverse social fabric, the requirement of substantial equality are a bedrock of every constitutional democracy. And these ideals must be reflected even during the dispute resolution process. Let me clarify that my intention in flagging of these concerns is not to discourage mediation, but to make it a more robust process. My object is to initiate a debate and discussion in regard to the nature and the limitations of the role of a mediator, so that it can be clearly and carefully calibrated. Rather, the mediator must be equipped to understand the situation of the parties before him and to choose the appropriate approach. This can only be made possible with carefully designed, in-depth and continuous training of mediators. I believe that it may be beneficial to take a leaf of the book of the aviation industry. Commercial pilots are mandated to train every year. Such training usually contains a simulator component where pilots are given multiple scenarios to which they must safely land the plane in a flight simulator software. Mediators training programs should contain such a component, and the development of a game-like software for mediators might be a useful innovation to have in place. This is also brings to another important factor, the need of ethical standards, unimpeachable integrity, and neutrality of the mediators. As I mentioned earlier, a more active involvement of the mediator in the process of mediation could open the doors to parties attempting to influence them. This necessitates the creation of an environment which prevents any such attempts being made by any unscrupulous party. It requires that mediators be of good character and moral standing. For this, it is necessary that rules and regulations governing mediators are updated and implemented to ensure transparency and neutrality. The point that I have highlighted are only illustrative, and any solutions suggested are rudimentary at best. I am hopeful that the present summit will foster a dialogue from which solutions may emerge. I am looking forward to the conclusions that emerge from the interactions between practitioners in Singapore and India. Given the growing scope of mediation, it is time for India to enter mission mode. To popularize mediation as cheaper and faster dispute resolution mechanism, a movement needs to be launched, prescribing mediation as a mandatory first step for resolution of every allowable dispute, which will go a long way in promoting mediation. Perhaps an omnibus law in this regard is needed to fill the vacuum. We must take note of the fact that a vast majority of litigants in India belongs to middle and poorer sections of society. They will find great solace if mediation gets established as a reliable means of redress. Needless to state, it will lead to a remarkable reduction in the number of cases reaching the regular courts. Such a scenario will enhance the efficiency of the judicial system. India, the world's largest democracy, is home to many identities, religions, and cultures, which contribute to its unity through diversity. This is where the rule of law, with assured a sense of justice and fairness, come into play. Mediation being the cheapest and simplest option available to the public at large, can be described as a tool of social justice in the Indian context. Such a party-friendly mechanism ultimately upholds the rule of law by providing an incentive for parties to utilize their autonomy to the fullest to arrive at a just and equitable outcome. Several states in India are currently coming to build a robust and ADR-friendly environment. Recently, the state of Telangana has come forward to set up a state-of-art ADR facility. This is a welcome move, and I hope other states will soon follow. Cooperation between India and Singapore is going to be a significant factor in promoting alternative dispute redressal mechanisms in both our countries, as well as in the entire subcontinent. I would like to conclude with the words of Abraham Lincoln. I quote, "Discourage litigation, pursue your neighbor to compromise whenever you can. As a peacemaker, the liar has a superior opportunity of being a good man. There will still be business enough." Thank you. Thank you very much for giving this opportunity. Namaskar.
Thank you, Chief Justice Ramana, for your insightful keynote address. And amongst other themes, it's time for India to enter mission mode. Again, I'd like to thank Niti Aayog for coming on board as our partner, and to all our event partners in India, in Singapore, who extended their generous support to make this summit a reality. A big thank you to all of our participants for expressing your great enthusiasm and for joining us today. Till we meet again, take care and stay tuned for more updates on mediation. Thank you.